let's have 2 or 3 questions from the audience, but I would also like to give, if you know you've got a dinner date in 5 minutes, because we always promise we'll finish by 7, you are allowed to leave.
Okay? No, you're not. You have to storm out. I can't listen to any more of this shit, and you burst out of the door and make it dramatic.
We have a microphone, and it's very helpful if you wait for the microphone. So the gentleman over there has a question, and the microphone is coming to you. Thank you very much.
Oh, it's an American. It's a superior question.
All right, here.
What's your name?
Is this working? Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. So thank you very much for this. My name is Mason. I am a Jewish American. I grew up in basically the shadow of 9/11 and the Second Intifada. Half my family lives in Israel. I grew up there partially. I have also spent significant amount of time in the West Bank. And I have many close friends there. So it's a very personal issue to me. And as you said at the beginning, we have to take things as they are. And my number one conclusion from all of the time I spent there was that the issue is not so much legal status, it is a physical issue. It is, you can't carve up the West Bank into a Palestinian state now because the settlers have made it physically impossible. So I would like to hear your opinion on how a legal struggle for self-determination versus a legal struggle for human rights looks differently, and whether you think that a struggle for human rights is a more effective starting place. Because from what I can see, as you said, there's not going to be a 2-state solution. I'm not convinced that there's going to be a 1-state solution or any solution. But if there is going to be movement in that direction, it is going to require, I think, a shift in the way that people look at it legally, because the Israelis, they're not looking at it as an international human rights law. They don't give a damn. Everyone I've ever met there says, so what? We don't care. This is not a matter of human rights or national law, or this is a matter of our security. And so, yeah, I would like to hear whether you think that a shift in the legal thinking and the mindset is offers some way forward.
Well, I think it's very interesting what you say, the differentiation between, the right to the integrity of your nation state or whatever versus human rights. It's human rights. I mean, the truth is that true human rights is what protects you. One of our problems as Americans is we don't get that. There's going to be a time in 50 years when the Chinese run the world much more than the Americans do. And the Americans are going to wish they'd signed up to all of those human rights organizations and conventions. Do you know how many human rights conventions we've signed up to that are enforceable today? 0. None, not even the Convention Against Torture. So it's about human rights, but it's got to be a supranational solution from where I sit. Now, I know that's going to be hard to sell to Netanyahu and his ilk, and we have to take into account the fact that they're justifiably paranoid about what everyone thinks. And, our problem to date is that, like many parts of the world, the whole area has been a proxy battle between first Russia or the Soviet Union and the US, and then any other number of groups. So I don't underestimate the incredible difficulty to get from where we are today to where we need to be. But it has to be a solution where we basically have an area, Judea, Palestine, whatever the hell it's called, that is a protectorate of the world. That's the only way to do it. I don't see any other solution because you just can't have this absurd notion of democracy when democracy involves putting security above all else and trampling on the minority. It just doesn't work. So we got to do that. Now, the issue is who's going to do it. I take it that because you're significantly younger than me, that you're going to get the job done, because I probably won't do it in my lifetime, no matter how much I pickle myself in gin and tonic. So I'm depending on you, Mason. And which side of the Mason-Dixon line are you from? The South. So I'm very much a Southerner. So that gives you more power, because the things we're slightly ashamed of turn out to be our superpowers. Yeah. We're in the South.
We're in New Mexico.
Oh, that's not really the South, that's the West. But I mean, you know, we've had those problems. We've all got great examples of that. I was in South Africa recently, and it's so interesting to see that as an example. It's not a perfect society now, but it's better than it was.
Anyone got a second question? Yes. If anyone needs to go, we understand, because we have gone over 7, so don't
Feel
be...
free. I'm happy to stay as long as anyone wants to, but
I don't know if I should stand up or not.
You can, yes, that's fine.
you can call me Your Eminence if you want. It's just
My question first, maybe a disclaimer. I'm not British nor American. I'm a citizen of the European Union. I'm Portuguese, so
we're so jealous of you, if I may say so.
yes. So there might be some political sensitivities that I might not understand because I'm not from here. But my question is a follow-up on the last part of your lecture, which was very interesting, and also a follow-up on the last question, which is I'm also a legal advisor, so I don't understand how can we shape people's opinion with law. So basically your idea is that if we give Palestine statues as a protectorate,
well, no, it has to include Israel as well. It's got to be all
you have
together.
to change the Israelis' minds on what are Palestinians. I've never been to Israel. I've never been to Palestine. I've read about it, but oftentimes what I read from I guess independent sources is that there is so obviously the government is bad, but there is also an opinion of the general population that the other side is not even human. It's subhuman.
Of course there is. Okay, and it's a good point. And, you know, it's interesting how societies develop, because the first time I went to your country was before you did. And it was when there was a vaguely fascist dictatorship in Portugal before, you know, even when Spain was still hard at it. So we can change those things. And if I was Prime Minister of Britain, which is significantly unlikely to happen, the first thing I'd do is halve the price of football tickets just to make everyone happy. But the second thing I'd do is I would agree to go to Israel. I would agree that British troops would go to Israel and Gaza and protect everyone. And if you want to kill it, and I'd send all the doctors there too, because security, you know, one thing that's interesting about going to Afghanistan a lot, and I've been there a lot recently, is notwithstanding the problems in Afghanistan, and I think we can agree that they're not a paragon of gender good sense. Nevertheless, it is the securest country I've been in for a long time. And security is what matters to people most in Afghanistan, as with everyone else. And what we need to do for both the Palestinians and the Israelis and make them safe. And to do that, I don't mind. I had this plan when we were going to take Brooks to Gaza, that I was going to go with Steve Coogan, who was willing to do this, and stand on the front of the boat. If the IDF want to shoot us, let them shoot us. I don't give a shit. I've lived a good life. And we'd do it all on TV, because that would dissuade them from doing it. We need to stand there with them. We need to go there with them.
Sorry, maybe a quick question, but what standing does...
The law, no, the hell with the law is an ass. The law is an ass. So yeah, I hope you're not a lawyer. I think lawyers is good. Yeah. No, my legal advice is you forget all the law. What we're trying to do for powerless people is bring them power. And that very rarely involves the law. Sometimes it does. You need a little bit of law. But you've got to have principles and morals. But the law is not the primary enforcement of morality. So in Guantanamo Bay, I have been privileged to represent 87 prisoners and get 87 of them out. And the courts ordered the release of one. The vast majority got out because we shamed the United States into doing the right thing. So the law, human rights as principles, is a great idea. But if you expect the courts to enforce them, you're delusional. So what we got to do then is take the principles that are in everyone's good books. If you read, one thing I find fascinating is asking people the difference, the single difference between the Christian New Testament and the Communist Manifesto. What is it? There's one difference, and that's that God in the Christian thing is the Christian God. God in the Communist Manifesto is the deranged notion that inevitability of history leads you to socialism. So they both got a God, but the rest of it is all cool. Everyone is all about being nice to poor people and helping them. The same's true of the Quran, the same's true of the Torah. So what we got to get to is where people see those things, and where they get away from this notion that there's a solution to our problems by just doing the opposite of what my grandfather, the gay Jewish guy, would have wished.
I think I'm going to close the formal proceedings here because I know people need to leave. But I know Clive is always happy to chat to people afterwards. That is correct, isn't it?
That is correct, indeed.
So let's join in thanking Clive for his lecture. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.